All right. Good afternoon. Welcome to the March 14th, 2024 Distress Unit Appeals Board meeting. I see we have a full quorum. And so I will call the meeting to order. I would like to recognize that this meeting is being held in compliance with the open door law, along with all the requisite notifications that come along with that. The first order of business today is the approval of the minutes of our we'll take them individually. The February 14th, 2024 public meeting. Meeting minutes were previously distributed. Are there any clarifications or corrections needed on those minutes? Hearing that, motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
So motion, is there a second?
Second.
And a second? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. The February 14th public meeting minutes are adopted. Next, we'll take out the executive session minutes of February 26th, 2024. Any comments or clarifications needed on that? Is there a motion to approve those minutes? There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Those meeting minutes are adopted. Thank you very much. We'll now move right into our public comment period. And we have two people in the audience that have signed up. Dr. Spangenberg, you wish to speak? Or? Yeah. Oh, that'd be great. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Myself, other members of my community, and nearby communities are kind of troubled by the increasing push around schools that are either under the authority of DUAB or have been threatened to be under the authority of DUAB towards school closures. Even though I know in this body before this was discussed and there was this idea of, well, let's wait until a superintendent comes in, which, you know, I think most people could agree with. There's been like this continued push, and I'm not necessarily saying there's any malice behind it. Lots of things can motivate people, and I do think that our community often gets accused of malice or accusing people of malice where there may not necessarily be any. But there's a continuing push to close schools and a continuing and unfortunate lack of oversight, you know, by our advisory state appointed board, and maybe that's not their fault. Maybe they're just not well equipped. It's a very strange situation where the individuals that you are supposed to be advising or learning to provide oversight over are informing what you should expect to do while providing that oversight. There's a lot of dual roles that are happening that I don't think are healthy to the continued ability of that board to provide oversight. And given that we've seen repeatedly in our district and other districts that when schools are closed, especially when schools are closed by people outside of the community, or people, you know, even if they're within the community, who do not seem to have the best interests of the community at heart, then what happens is there's enrollment declines and the financial stability of the district suffers. So I question why again and again we're continuing to have this conversation on the local level, and this is continuing to be pushed in the way that it is, especially because on one hand, every day we're being told the financial situation is improving. And yet the public input over the appointment of the superintendent has been very minimal compared to what it has been in the past. And people are very concerned about that moving forward, and also the pace at which the superintendent is being hired, especially since there's allegedly 28 candidates. It's going to be very difficult to feel that that person is being put on a good footing. Especially as, you know, when we're providing the facility documents that indicate that NIPSCO rebates were being utilized for the last whole of the takeover, are just now being utilized, but the way that they're described doesn't quite make sense. You know, we question what shape are we gonna get the district back in? And so I really encourage, again, local control and a transition back to meeting for local control. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Tyndall?
Good afternoon, distressed in the field board. I am Mrs. Rebecca Spindle. And I am a Gary tax-paying, voting, self-proclaimed top advocate for high-quality, equitable education of all students in our potentially world-renowned model school corporation. As a 1966 graduate of the architecturally renowned, historically profound model institution of higher learning, Gary Theodore Roosevelt High School, I want this board and the future superintendent and all Gary Community School Corporation administrators and staff to be trained in diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice and belonging. I want all teachers properly credentialed. I want a 1-to-3 special needs teacher-student ratio and a 1-to-12 teacher-student ratio to accommodate our general students as Gary Community School Corporation advances from failing to the model status of excellence. I want a properly ventilated school building system. I want inclusion of 2 parents and 2 high school students in the superintendent search process. I say I, but I mean we the community, and I don't mean Mr. Razor's community, I mean the Gary community. We want inclusion of those people. We want questions answered. One of those questions is what other superintendent search agencies were considered for our superintendent of Gary schools? How did they rank in the vote of the body that voted for the search committee? We want to know and establish that no student is to be left behind, ignored, miseducated, undereducated, disrespected in any way in any of Gary schools. I want the status of the present arrangement reportedly according to a parent, children, special needs children who are in diapers are having those diapers changed by teachers. I want that to stop. We want that to stop. We want teachers to focus on teaching our students, not changing diapers. We want, instead of teachers escorting children to and from the cars that they have been transported to and from school in, we don't want teachers responsible for escorting services. We want parents to be allowed to bring their children into the building and take their children from the building. We want a pool for our children. At our last school board meeting, it was announced that our system is going to start using the Hobart school system, Hobart Wise pool for our activities of our children. That is not acceptable. We have a pool, fix the pool, use the pool that is at Westside, that is in our community. Thank you very much in advance for your commitment to work for the good of our children. Stop wasting time, stop wasting money, so that every Gary Schools student and teacher is a model, excellent, globally competitive, and competent student and teacher. I pray that God leads you, because it doesn't seem to be the case at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Timberline. I believe we have one person that's online. Attorney Coleman, can you, well, we will unmute you here. And if you can unmute, I'll say the airwaves are yours, Attorney Coleman.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm attorney Tracy Coleman, and I know today slide that so is on the agenda. I just want to take DUAB to 2020 when our children experienced when they were being fed an ultra rich for breakfast. At the same time, Valparaiso being fed sausage and egg sandwich, chip French toast, juice, and a variety. So when we look at things as food service, the restrooms, there's a reason DUAB has to ask itself, why are children very chronically absent? What has happened under this system? These children stop going to school, especially when you look at one where the chronically absent rate is over 90%. And if people truly cared enough where you have professors and data and look at correlations, it might be just as simple as what are you feeding these children? Do they have proper supplies in the restroom? And in 2020, he's walked out of West Academy to bring attention to those conditions which they felt were deplorable. And instead of things I'm seeing where, hey, the food service company, it goes on business as usual. And that should not be the case for young children. And I look at 2023, 2024, here's pictures of what children are fed, what you're now being fed macaroni and watermelon. So I would ask that do its due diligence with service and make sure that our children are treated as human beings. I would also like to go to the swimming pool. There's a saying, people buy what they want, what they need. There for the children that we had Dr. able to spend $8 million on, even though this community a facilities plan, which requires to be built. Children in our community don't use a furniture. Lose lives in our because children do not know. So I would ask that we move forward that the new superintendent is equipped, not what affects, but what resources that were intended to do. We know that whatever many of these not proficient pass these tests back. This becomes a huge crisis not only for America. These are American school systems. Our children cannot fail as a country. There has to be a that Gary needs to be stronger. So I would ask that you add, when we look at these tracks coming through, when we look at what independent will face, also look at assistant, Mr. George Smith, economics, you just increase enrollment. It's that simple. But when we have a system which will force us to fund charter schools that are failing, it doesn't model a simple. It leads to a traditional school constantly under other agendas which do not include the Gary children. I would add, put children first, but these American children going to be residents of Louisiana. We first by giving them resources, that we forgive the debt of the school system, that we make sure that when the new superintendent is in place, a system of accounting, that we also make sure a curriculum well and solidified, so we're not continuing to pass children grade to grade where they can't read, write, basic math, but they're empowered to be those.
Attorney Coleman, could you please conclude? You've run through your 3 minutes, but please conclude.
Thank you, sir, for allowing me to conclude. I would just ask, please, look out for these children as if they were your children.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That concludes our public comment period. With anything else online? Okay, thank you. We'll move into our updates from the Gary Community School Corporation. We'll have 3 segments to our updates: academic, financial, and facilities. And Mavis, do you want to kick us off with the academic update?
Absolutely. Okay, so we'll start out with some of the data that I've committed to sharing every month, just so you can kind of keep a pulse on what's going on in the buildings. This is data that we calculated and reviewed internally as well. The first piece is installing for the first piece is attendance. So I'll say before I jump in, want to share this data transparently, good or bad. There's some good and there's some bad in here. Attendance is some really good news. Our attendance went up in February. It was higher in every single building compared to January, and in almost all cases was the highest since October. So we really are seeing a bump in attendance, which is great. And your kids if they're not in the building. So that's certainly an important piece of it. We're starting to, this past month, I would attribute it to a couple increase in attendance to a couple of things. Part of it, I'll say, in fact, was outside of our control. The weather was better. We didn't have as many holidays. Some of this was days where we know attendance is often low. We didn't have as many of those in February. But we also have been tracking attendance publicly, talking about it with kids, celebrating students for high attendance. Two of those positive incentives that help kids come to school. And we've been doing a lot of project-based learning, especially in our STEM schools. And I think that gets kids motivated. We also had a pretty robust Black History Month program with a lot of different events for students to engage in that I think also help kids feel motivated to come to school. You can see it's still lower in our secondary schools. The highest was Banneker Elementary. If you go to the next slide, our elementary schools are ranging between 82 and almost 88% average daily attendance. Our secondaries are between low at Westside is about 75 and 82% at GMS. Gary Middle School did have the biggest bump, which is great. That's often been one of our tougher campuses, so it's good to be in school there. We are also mindful of the legislation recently passed related to attendance, and so we are working to kind of build up our systems for supporting attendance. It's kind of 2 sides to that. There's the legal truancy piece, and then there's the, helping remove barriers, which is slow, difficult work and requires a lot of labor from our team. But we're looking to leverage our community engagement team. So the money we recently got from the statewide family engagement grant to support all of those systems, and hopefully we'll see these attendance numbers continue to increase. Where we saw a little bit more of a challenge in February was around suspensions. So if we go to the next slide, Pete, our secondary suspensions were higher in February than they have been for most of the year, particularly at Westside. Now, I will say Westside in particular has been really trying to we're trying to improve attendance, but we're also trying to improve or reduce tardiness and make sure they kids are in class on time. When you have those 45-minute periods, when kids are coming 5-10 minutes late, it really cuts into instructional time. So Westside's implemented some systems to really crack down on tardies. And I think what we're seeing in the suspensions is kind of a reaction to that. Kids had found a way to kind of get around the previous system, and so they're learning that there are real consequences. That's mostly not out of school suspension. We actually see it higher in our in-school suspension numbers, which you don't see here. We don't like to send kids home for being late to class if possible. It's not a very effective intervention, but it does get there after a certain very high number. We're hopeful that this will have been enough for kids to kind of feel that there's going to be a real consequence and start to adjust their behavior accordingly. That's what I would attribute the high and west side to. If you go to the next slide, we've got elementaries. Again, this is just kind of the data we've been looking at all year. Most of our elementaries are doing well. February was a high month for Beveridge and for McCullough, which is on the next slide. They're still, low, especially if you compare to the secondary levels. They're certainly not to the same level at our middle and high schools. But we are having some disciplinary issues there and student behaviors at those two campuses. Beveridge has always been one of our schools that has a little bit more trouble with discipline. So we're working to provide some social emotional support, which I'll talk about in a bit. We're also working to support teachers there, not because of any, choices made by teachers, which has been a surprising number of family circumstances among the staff at Beveridge that have kept teachers out of school, which always increases student behavior issues. I'll pause there before I go on to talk about the two topics I kind of wanted to deep dive into, which are social emotional learning and college and career readiness. But any questions about the data on attendance and suspension before?
Yes, Dr. Smith.
Yes, I want to go back to the attendance.
Yeah.
Besides using suspension and expulsion to deal with that, what are you doing to motivate the students again? Now, based on this, not that I know it all, but that's 20 years of practice as a practicing principal, where my attendance and absenteeism rate never went less than 96%. And we did it through a lot of motivation. We found that a certificate at the end of the year was not motivation for urban students. Because they throw them all over the school before they even leave the building, but you find them on the way home. But of course, I used to have neighborhood schools then, so we find them all over the ground leading to their homes. And what we did was to upgrade the awards. We had a monthly competition for pizza and for ice cream parties. We gave quarterly certificates. We gave semester awards that were something tangible that the kids would want. And then at the end of the year, they got large trophies. The trophies were not little tiny trophies, but good trophies. So it became more motivational for the students. We also tried to get to the root of the problem. We worked with the parents and did some research to find out what was the cause for them being late. We found that a number of our parents were having to leave home early to get to South Florida to get to Chicago to work. So the children were left at home to get up on their own. And so we brought 50 clocks and we taught those kids how to set their alarm clock and take ownership for getting there. I'm just throwing out a few of the things that we did. There are more. I have an op-ed that I wrote after the article came out showing how low Gary's attendance rate was. I'm willing to share it with you, have all the ideas pending. But I think you can do more to be able to attend you. As you said at the school when or somebody said, you can't teach when they're not there, okay? And so I think we make more effort. I'm willing. I don't get paid to be a consultant, but I will come to Gary Schools free and work with the principals. But I think you can turn that around. I think you can improve. And that's based on 20 years of practice.
Absolutely. I agree with everything you just said, Dr. Smith. I think that kind of two-sided piece of it, which is celebrating, and you're exactly right, both because the certificate has limited impact on some of our students, but also the delayed gratification, right? It needs to be a little bit more immediate.
They don't have play practice.
Exactly.
Okay.
So we've got to give the rewards on a more granular, like weekly or monthly sort of
Yeah.
basis, and then start to build it up.
And, you know, I've only worked in high school for 1 year. It's a little different as far as reward, but, we did it with, friend. We actually baked cookies in the school, or whatever, cookies, and we baked them and we gave those out to the kids. And we also had sock hops at lunchtime for the ones who had good attendance program. So I'm saying you have to look at different strategies, but they do work. Because our children are not intrinsically motivated, they're extrinsically motivated. You got to get them to the point where they want to be successful regardless of the outside reward. And I think with what you're doing at the high school, if I didn't misunderstand you, I think it's counterproductive to have children who are late or who are not attending and suspend them. You put right in the broad patch where he wants to be in the first place, don't want to come. I think you ought to keep him after school. And you are to maybe create some Saturday experiences that you require them to come to, some things that you can do prior to suspending expulsion. Because if you continue to expel them, they're not there. You suspend them, they're not there. You've got to find a way, and I think you're not going to do it until you start teaming with the parents. You're not going to get what you need until you start teaming with the parents. And one of the things I think MGT has a mistake they've made is, and I think it's under Dr. Brazier is a little bit better, but we push the parents out, push them out. And you can't get touchdowns unless all the team members are going in the same direction. And so I'm saying that some things that we were doing in various schools before NGT, we've lost. And we got to go back and pick them up, dust them off, and use them because they work. Okay? And the research shows.
Absolutely. You'll be pleased to know that we are doing some sock hops as attendance incentives.
Okay.
And some events like that that you get into if you have positive attendance. Each school's kind of, got a different flavor of how they're rewarding kids. I think, we're meeting with principals tomorrow, actually, and part of the agenda is kind of sharing out what are the best things the rewards that have resonated most with kids, so we can share some of those ideas, but absolutely the direction we want to go in. I also want to reinforce what you said about suspending kids for tardiness and absences. It's not a good strategy at all. The reason we're seeing it right now is that essentially students were going to every single class late. And we've set up a system so that if they get a certain number of tardies, and it's a very high number, pull them in school, so they're not able to kind of be with their friends. What we normally, that would not get to the level of out-of-school suspensions. It's just because the kids have been getting away with it for so long that they have such a backlog of tardies. I think if we see these same numbers next month, we've got a real issue. We need to change our strategy. The hope and what the West Side team's theory of action is that those kids will start to realize that there are going to be real consequences for, and by tardies, I mean skipping half of class and spending it in the bathroom or in the hallways or the surge or wherever. So certainly something to work on. And the other thing that we're doing on attendance is hopefully expanding the hours that we have our family and community liaisons spend so they can really do some of that problem solving, reaching out to families to identify, like you mentioned, Dr. Smith, some of those common barriers, and can we think outside the box about how we help our parents overcome those barriers. So certainly thinking in the same direction, and it's a challenge that a lot of places are facing post-COVID, but it's certainly, worse and scary than it should be. And you're right, we can't expect to see academic gains if we can't get kids in the building. And I think what I always try to remind people of with both discipline and attendance is at the end of the day, if we could have really high quality, engaging, relevant instruction in every single classroom every day, our attendance and our suspensions would be much lower because kids would be really motivated to be in class. So we want to make sure we're spending a lot of our focus on that because that's what's going to, address the root cause of all.
Yeah, and I think when you're talking about the engagement and so forth, that was another area. And I asked my LA to bring my op-ed over for you, so I had that people. One of the things that we did in our schools, and I worked in 4 different schools as an administrator, was to make schools a fun place to learn.
Yeah.
All education is not fun, but we infuse things that the kids enjoy doing. And so, I think there's a lot of research out there that works, and I don't know how much of it you're looking at, but you need to do it. And then my last point, I know you need to move on, this is the last point I'm gonna make on this portion of your report. I tried to get a bill passed that required the Department of Education to do a study, on, student behavior.
How about
Not only student behavior, but parental behavior, because I thought the problem was just in the urban communities. But I now represent suburbia, and they report the same kind of headaches. And so it's a statewide problem that we got to deal with. And I think that all educators ought to be saying to the governor, to the Secretary of Education, while the legislature did not mandate a study, that the studies need to find out what's the root of these problems and how do we solve them. Because it's a statewide problem.
Absolutely.
Any other questions on attendance or suspensions?
Great, so the first piece I wanted to do a deeper dive into is social emotional learning. And I bring this up because of the high suspensions. We can, tighten up our classroom management procedures, create new systems to catch tardies and all of those things. But alongside engaging instruction, as I just referenced, we want to tackle the root cause of the issue, which is that many of our students, a higher proportion than in a typical school district in Indiana, come to us with social emotional needs. Whether that's a result of an adverse childhood experience or, any variety of things that might be going on in their home or in their past or in the community. We know that our students' behavior is an expression of some kind of need being unmet. And so one of the ways that we want to tackle that is not just by being punitive, but starting to try to address those needs. And help our students learn how to behave appropriately in school, because they don't always come to us with that. So social emotional learning is one of these kind of buzzwords that gets talked about and used in a lot of different ways. So I just wanted to clarify a little bit what it is. The research that I'm referencing here that we use in the district is from CASEL, which is the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. It's out of Chicago. It's kind of the gold standard in SEL. Their definition here is that SEL is the process through which all young people and adults acquire and apply the knowledge, skills, and attitudes to develop healthy identities, manage emotions, and achieve personal and collective goals, feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintain supportive relationships, and make responsible and caring decisions. The idea of teaching SEL is that, often what we do in the classroom is kind of hope that our students come to us with all of these things and get really frustrated when they don't. By teaching SEL explicitly, we're able to help our students gain these skills instead of just hoping that they pick them up along the way somewhere. And many of them are things, that I see happening in classrooms around, deep breathing and taking a moment when you're frustrated and things like that, I wish somebody had talked to me about earlier, that are, strategies that I employ now for myself. So you can see there are 5 big buckets of SEL instruction: self-awareness, self-management, responsible decision-making, relationship skills, and social awareness. We do a number of things in the SEL area. We are still kind of early in the adoption of this. We hired a full-time SEL coordinator in fall of 2021. As soon as we're coming back and dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic, we're still very much in the thick of it at that time. We noticed that students, had all kinds of different experiences while they were home. And so we saw a real need for this type of work. And I think that's common with a lot of other districts. So our SEL coordinator has been doing a lot of work, bringing in programs, bringing in external professional development, and traveling around to schools and kind of teaching teachers, working directly with students, all in these 5 buckets. So I won't read the full slide to you, but a lot of what she does is around, like I said, mindfulness, setting up spaces, helping teachers build into their classroom management strategies, opportunities for kids to cool off if they're frustrated, take a moment. she works with small groups of kids who need kind of what we call tier 2 and tier 3 support around SEL. They're really struggling to manage their emotions, and we're seeing it impact the classroom negatively. So she's pulling them out and working with small groups and one-on-one. Even, you know, things like classroom games around responsible decision-making for the elementary kids and things like that. On the next slide, you'll see one of these pieces, and this is just a small chunk, but something that we've begun implementing this year. It's a program called Class Catalyst. So a common practice when I was teaching, for example, was to have students, you know, as sort of an early SEL idea, was to have students keep a little journal. So at the beginning of the day, they kind of get their feelings out, and then the teacher can dialogue with them back and forth in kind of a private way if they want to, or if the teacher sees something concerning there, they can pull them out and help them, or whether that's a conversation or connecting them with supports. So Class Catalyst is just a digital version of that. It's kind of a check-in tool. You can see there's a little kind of excerpt of what it looks like at the elementary level. Kids will kind of say how they're doing, and then there's an opportunity to write some notes. So if there's, you know, something wrong, something they need help with, they didn't get any sleep last night, they're worried about their mom, etc. You can put that in there, or, you know, they're feeling really great, they've got a celebration, you can put that in there too. I've got a little data there just so you can see how it's being used. I'll say, and I said this the other night, most of the bars look small just because Glen Park is using it so much. They've been an early adopter of this and have really jumped in. So they've got a lot of students using it in a lot of classrooms. And other schools are still kind of early picking it up. Some teachers are using it, some aren't. So we're sort of in the pilot phase, but the folks that are using it are really liking it, and we're still getting professional development out to teachers on it. The last thing I'll share on SEL is a calendar that Ms. Sizemore creates and shares with teachers every month, just with a couple of focus activities that they can do that align to these CASEL buckets. So you can see that March was responsible decision-making was the focus area. And so every week she has 2 different activities for both elementary and for secondary to help them kind of gain some of those skills. And many teachers are picking up and using those. And they're short, they don't really take out of instructional time. It's just kind of start the day activities, warm up activities to get everyone started on the right foot and to infuse that SEL conversation into instruction. So that's just one of the ways that we're trying to make sure that as we tackle discipline challenges, we're not being fully punitive, we're also looking for ways to support students and make sure that their needs are being met. Along with, of course, we have behavior specialists in every building, we have counselors in our secondary schools, we have City Connects coordinators to help coordinate with external and internal resources, and a number of other supports like that that help students with behavior challenges. Questions on that
before you leave?
Yeah.
On the Class Catalyst.
Yeah.
And I realized that, not to read too much into the bar charts, because it's at the beginning stages and some people are engaging, you know, more quickly than others. On where it says this total staff replies.
Yeah.
Is that a teacher or a counselor or Ms. Sizemore or?
Yeah, usually what that means is, so the kids will check in, you know, and it's just like, how are you today? And they pick their emoji or whatever it is, and it varies by age level. And then there's an option to write a little note if they want to. That's what the student notes they are. And then the teacher, the idea is they do that, and then the teacher gets them started on an instructional activity, and then they would go back to their computer and kind of scan, like, how's everybody doing? Is anybody off today that I might need to proactively talk to? A teacher could respond in a number of ways. The program allows for replies, and that's what's tracked there. Sometimes the teacher will do that. Sometimes Ms. Sizemore may go in and do that, especially if she's been working directly with the class. A lot of times, though, if the teacher sees that, they're going to, you know, go stop by that kid's desk and say, how are you doing? You're all right? Do you need anything? Or if it was like a note that said something serious was going on, they might get in touch with the counselor or behavior specialist or someone like that so that they can proactively get that kid some support before things escalate or it becomes unprotected in the classroom.
Thank you. Yes.
What is the ratio of licensed teachers to those who are not licensed in the building?
So all of our teachers hold the appropriate licensures. Many of them are on emergency permits. So
about those people not licensed, and when I say licensed, I'm not talking about a waiver.
Yes, I definitely understand the distinction. I don't know the exact ratio off the top of my head. I think it is around a third are on emergency permits, but I can send you that. We looked at it at the beginning of the year and I can send it to you if you'd like.
Because research has shown that those teachers who haven't had the methodology, pedagogy many times have behavior problems in the classroom.
Oh, absolutely.
And so, one of the things that you might want to keep in mind is trying to pull those away from the rest and give them an intensive, in-service and maybe, do partnering, with teachers who are licensed so they can help them with those students. Because if you don't start the year off, right, you're gonna have trouble the whole year. And so it's very important that you do that. Then I wanted to just share some ideas with you, if I may. I think, first of all, I found a way to get rid of the behavior problems is to connect with the students. And you have to be intentional with that. When's your birthday? Are you having a birthday party? I'll come. Are you getting baptized? I will come. You having a house party? I will come. I didn't stay very long, but I came. And in addition to that, having talks with kids where you care about them and find out the mother was ill or whatever is troubling them by asking them and following up on it. It has to be very intentional. It has to be methodical for it to be effective. And so I would like to suggest that you may want to share that with the teachers. But also, I'm glad to hear you talk about getting into the affective domain because we neglect that. We're concerned about the cognitive domain, the psychomotor domain, but we neglect the affective domain. And you got to get in because the affective domain that controls the cognitive domains that controls your behavior, your psychomotor domain. Teaming, I want to go back to parents because you will find that parents are advising students contrary to what the policies and the rules are in your school. You will find parents say, if that teacher hits you, hit them back. Okay, you're going to tell them you got to talk about the language that's being used in the hospital. That's why the kids are becoming useless language because they think it's okay because parents curse them. Okay. Thanks to God, I never heard my mother curse any of the 10 of us, and we were urchins. We were baby kids, but she never cursed any of us. But these kids are dealing with that, so they bring that to school where you got a first grader calling the teacher BIDCH. I'm sure you've heard that happening in the various schools because the teachers tell me about it. And then I think that you have to have them understand that these kids should not solve their own problems if they're dissatisfied with their teacher. The parents should tell them to obey the teacher and then go to the principal, and from the principal, they'll get satisfaction. I'm gonna be able to fight and let the parents come on and deal with it. And you gotta get them on the same team. And their kids and the parents I know are not on the same team level with the schools. And you gotta pull them in because that's where it's supported. And then one more point I want to make with it is that our children need workshops on problem solving. They don't know how to solve problems. They do it with their hands, with their fists, and with their mouths. And so it's got to be intentional. Is there any monitoring? That's my last question. Is there any monitoring? You got these activities. But with this age of test craziness, and I hear this with the teachers I'm preparing at the university, we don't have time to do that. I'm preparing to be a minister. We don't have time to deal with the effective makeup. You got to take time. And so is this being monitored? Because what's inspected is what's respected. And so when you've got this person who's supposed to be dealing with this area, how much monitoring is occurring?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I'll kind of start there. And it's an area for growth, certainly. It partially because, it's one of these things there's a lot of different ways you can do it. It all comes back, as you noted, to relationships, and the teacher-student relationship is so core. And it can look a lot of different ways, and it can be tricky to observe. Pushing, we can push something like class catalyst, but if the teacher comes to us and says, well, I do these one-on-one check-ins where we do conferences, that's a great way to do it as well. We do need to improve in the way we're monitoring it and helping our leaders understand what it looks like and what it can sound like so that they know what to look for in the building. So I do think that's an area that we can grow. And I've been working with the side more a bit on that kind of okay, you've got people excited about the idea. How do you help them stick with it when things like testing are pulling their attention? I completely agree with you, and I'm glad you said it about, we've got to make time for this. And, I'm a big believer that if we do the right things in the classroom, which is supporting students, building relationships with students, providing engaging, deep instruction, helping them learn how to solve problems, both in life and in academic problems, test scores will improve. We don't have to spend all our time on test prep for test scores to improve. If we support students and ensure that they're thriving in the classroom, test scores will reflect that eventually. So I think it's definitely something that we're still grappling with. The point about the emergency permits, we've got some data while you're sharing. We have 54 teachers with emergency permits right now. That's district-wide. We are looking, I think we're only, as well as I do, if not better, that the teacher pipeline is not as robust as it once was. We're not getting as many candidates who have the training that they need to really be successful on day one. So I think as a district, we need to just embrace where we are. We have a lot of teachers with emergency permits. We're going to have a lot of teachers with emergency permits if something doesn't change more globally. So we do need to set aside money to do kind of a beginning of year intensive training for those folks who we know are going to be coming to us without what they need to hit the ground running. And you're exactly right. It needs to happen before school. We can monitor and we can help them tweak and we can help them share strategies throughout the year. But I still remember my first year teaching all too well when I did not have the class under control at the start of the year and tried to do it later on. And, so I knew what that probably looked like. So we're lucky we all survived. So certainly things, I think exactly aligned on some of the areas for growth and good pushes and definitely similar direction of where we're thinking.
Have you ever had a discussion with the faculty, because sometimes we create the problems when we talk to children?
Oh, absolutely.
And I hear it.
Mhm.
I'm not just monitoring what you're doing, but because of all the community projects that bring flyers there, and I hear the way the children are talked to.
Mhm.
And so that's not engaging.
No.
That's, you catch one fly from honey. I'm not saying you're supposed to take everything the child to do, you're supposed to approve everything you do. I'm saying,
Mhm.
who are the professionals? We are.
Absolutely.
We're the professionals, and we need to act like it.
Absolutely. We've definitely had that conversation explicitly and continuously. I think the presence of teachers with emergency permits coming in who haven't necessarily grappled with what it means to be a teacher and what it means to be a professional educator are where we see a lot of those issues. But I totally agree. We cause a lot of our own problems in the classroom, or we escalate problems that could have been small and solved quickly through, relationships and kind of a one-on-one person-to-person conversation, but they get escalated because of what the work is.
Thank you.
All right, last, just a bit about college and career readiness. So this slide I won't read to you, it's really just for your information. We did a tour with the school board and a few community members of the Career Center last month, right?
A couple weeks ago.
Yeah, a few weeks ago, to see just the different industries that we have and the facilities that we have set up. So wanted to share a list of the certifications that are offered. I think once we get to the end of the school year, we'll share how many students gain certifications in each area. It's something we'd like to grow, that programming. We've really got some awesome opportunities there for kids that are engaging and are relevant and will lead to job opportunities. So for those kids who are interested in it, I think it's a great opportunity. And even for kids who are college bound, I know when I was doing the tour, which I've done many times, but when I was doing it most recently, I thought, man, I was definitely going to college. I'd like to take this media arts class or this aviation class. So there's a lot of good stuff up there that we're going to keep promoting. And the other piece I wanted to speak to briefly is our early college program. So Westside Leadership Academy is part of the Early College Accreditation Network. We're one of 12 high schools who are working to become early college certified. We get some funding through UIndy, and we get some technical support from CEL and from Mentor School, which is Hobart High School, to build our early college programming. It's certainly in its infancy. You can see from numbers, we only have 6 graduating seniors enrolled in the program, but those numbers climb as we get to the lower grades. So we're really trying to build that program up. What we need to do, this past month, actually, we've been meeting with 8th grade students and talking to them about the program and what they need to be thinking about and doing in order to build that pipeline. As we look at scheduling for next year, we also want to build in advanced coursework opportunities in the middle school so that kids can come into Westside with a little bit of a leg up, which opens the door for them to do more things like AP and dual credit courses. If we continue the direction we have, which we certainly intend to, those 21 sophomores currently enrolled in the program will be able to graduate with their associate's degree if they so choose. We're currently approved to offer 23 courses. We have students enrolled in 10 of them. That's just based on numbers and interest and what those kids wanted to take. But we're looking to just continue growing that program. We're in the final phase of the accreditation. That'll happen next month, and all signs are looking positive for right now. So we're just looking where our focus is on how we can continue to grow the program over time.
Very good. Any questions for Mavis?
Yeah, my question is, I'm really taken back by this low number of students, because we know we got some charter schools where all of their whole school graduates with associate's degree. What are we doing differently I mean, we have not been motivating our students. What is the problem?
Well, we had so if you think about timelines, we've had some transition at the high school that I think has held the program back. That we're only in our second year of the early college program, so it is just kind of in its infancy. And we want to make sure, I would say the other differentiator is we really want to make sure that our students are successful in these courses. So we will, if the student's not doing well in one of their college courses, we'll try to counsel them to either, do some tutoring and get where they need to be, or if they want to delay and re-enroll in the next semester, because we want to make sure if they're having a college experience in high school, it's supportive and they come out successful with credits earned, versus trying to get a lot of students through the program who may not be prepared. I mean, the reality is, it's no secret if you look at our iLearn scores or any of our student data, we've got a lot of students who are well below grade level. So we want to make sure that our kids are prepared, and we are starting to grow that cohort. But I agree that it is small numbers and it's slow work, but we're still early and working to expand.
You said that you offer 23 courses?
We're approved for 23 and we have students currently enrolled in 10. I'm probably not going to be able to name them off the top of my head, but I can certainly send that to you if you'd like.
Okay, what percentage of your teachers are certified to teach dual credit courses?
Let's see, I don't have it in here. We have, I want to say it's about 5 at the Career Center and 4 or 5 at Westside. I have that and I can send it to you later if you'd like. Just look at it in front of
If
me.
you have that few number, how are you offering 23 courses?
Well, we're not. We only had students enrolled in 10 because of scheduling and we wouldn't have the student numbers for 23 courses either.
Okay.
And to the point about teacher pipeline and emergency permits, getting teachers who are dual credit certified is also one of our challenges, although it's something we've started to be able to grow and have some good.
We got legislative, Representative Thompson can tell you that's pushing career education, and as we get more and more bills coming through the hopper. What about career? How many are in career education program? I guess it could be through the Career Center as well.
Yeah, most of our career education comes through the Career Center. Yeah, there's 300 students at the Career Center, but I don't know how many Westside kids off the top of my head.
But I mean, to get that on the job experience is what I'm talking about, not just going through the coursework in the school, because they're moving more and more towards that.
You know, like apprenticeship and training opportunities.
Right.
Some of these certification options do come with that, like the early childhood I know has the work experience portion of it. Let's see, what's on here does. The CertSafe does, the EMT program has job training opportunities. So many of them do have kind of hands-on. Oh, and the barbering and cosmetology do as well. They get real work opportunities. So many of them do have that embedded in the programs.
Thank you. Good academic update. Appreciate it. Thank you. Dr. Razor, we'll move over to the financial update.
Good afternoon. You're going to notice quite a significant change if you were looking at last month's 2024 projections versus this month's 2024 projections, and to a very positive. And I wanted to caution the school board and the school administration that these were one-time things. One of the things we're trying to do is we're trying to set the district up with a nice surplus moving into the out years as we transition back to local control. And really, my two presentations today tie in together as well, as a way to when, now that ESSER funds are going away and 1065 funds have essentially all been allocated toward projects, how the district continues to address capital need, deferred maintenance and ongoing maintenance. So we have been fortunate to be able to do some things, and you can see on the next slide, it's going to be the adjustments that are, almost $8.5 million to the positive. So there's $5.5 million in indirect costs that we talked about, I believe, at the January meeting, that in February hit the books and ended up in the operations fund. Then we received, this doesn't happen every day. We received a check for $504,000 from the city of Gary out of the blue. Over 10 years ago, the city of Gary entered into a pilot payment in lieu of taxes agreement with an organization, and we had not been receiving our approximately $50,000 a year for the last 10 years. We got that check all at once. Then what isn't on here is just the day before yesterday, we received another check for $82,000 from the city of Gary, also for a payment in lieu of taxes agreement that was made. So those are unexpected but welcome funds. We did also have a transfer from debt service, and then due to two things, we were able to transfer additional money into operations from education because our education forecast has improved based upon our enrollment improving in the spring. And then finally, we got higher than anticipated tax collection and were able to forecast forward with that. So positive news, again, shared with the board and the district administration that this is one-time money and it's making 2024 as a calendar year, which is our fiscal year, look extremely positive when the margins were much tighter from actual funding. If we transition to the 5-year forecast, I will clarify, 5-year forecast is being shown by school year, not by calendar year. So that would be difference in numbers. Many of the things we present to the DUAB board are around school year, but you can see for the next 5 years, very positive projections, but with enrollment staying steady, and if the referendum were not to pass, the district would start running deficit in the 29-30 school year. And if we continued out past that, would be bordering on insolvency. Now, when I say that again, that's if nothing was changed, enrollment did not grow, and the referendum didn't pass. Of course, there are other levers. We've seen positive enrollment trends now, and really feel too that with the hiring of a superintendent, with the board taking control, with local control coming back, that's going to be attractive, and hopefully enrollment will continue to grow. So as we move into the funds.
Sorry, Dr. Richards, this slide has changed since I was on news.
Yes.
I'm assuming the enrollment increase is what is produced in all.
Yes, it has. The enrollment boost is what has done that. So essentially, we had $853,000 to the positive come into our projections with the enrollment increase. We are doing what I'd like to call a fuel gauge on each individual fund with the board each month, and giving them an idea of what the budget spend down looks like on an annual basis, as well as any major expenses that might be hit. Now, at the education fund, as I told them, you're going to see really uniform numbers most months in this fund. In January and February, very similar. In operations, it's going to fluctuate a little bit more, like a heart rate monitor from month to month. And you have things happen. So for example, we had a large transportation bill in the month of February, but it's because January and February's bill both were paid in February. December's bill was paid in January, and we're not in school for essentially half of January. So you're going to see some fluctuation there, but it is good for the board to see that. And something we've done as well is, even though our budget numbers have improved, we've not increased our budgets So we kept our budgets at where we drew the line when we had our state approved budget. As we go on to debt service, there were no debt service payments made. The referendum fund, again, is going to look very uniform each month in the way that it is spent down. Any questions about our financial report? Yes, sir.
Yes, does your adjustment, the additional money you got, is that reflected in this 28 million? Or is that on top?
That is reflected inside of
That's
this.
inside.
Yes.
What is your monthly operational, costs? And how much of this will be consumed before it's turned over to the new board?
So if you want to look, it's the fourth, two columns. There's two blue columns. If you look where it says ending balance, that's a $28 million reserve.
Right.
That will be turned over, well, actually, that's at the end of 2024. So in December, that's what we're projecting where we're going to end up.
Okay.
So when we turn over approximately half of that at the time, if you know, and that's just an estimate, but we're going to leave the district in 2024 with a very strong cash reserve.
Okay, so this is not a reserve come June 30th. This is a reserve for December.
Yeah, this is an annual forecast. I mean, but the reserve comes June 30th. If you want to just say approximately half that number.
Okay. Well, that doesn't sound good because if you got this 8 million is a cushion already in here.
No, it's very good, actually.
Okay, but I'm saying if you have that amount factored into this 28 million, and you said it'll be half of it, at that time, it will be this 8 plus another, 6 million that you really have to reserve as of June 1st, July 1st.
Yeah, I mean, and again, that's an approximation, just being half the year's done and half our funding has been received. But, and remember, that's after all the bills are paid, everything's taken care of. We'll have $14 million that is in the savings account, if you want to think of it that way.
Is that like a rainy day fund or is that under the operation as well?
It will be both. Some of it is residing in the education fund, but right now, we currently have $4 million in the rainy day fund. It would be my intention sometime before the exit of state control, that more money be placed into the rainy day fund it's going to lead right to my next presentation, for operational costs, really capital and deferred maintenance.
I'm really pleased to hear you projecting all the way to 29-30. That means it gives us some time locally to get ahead.
Yeah, but it's absolutely necessary.
I'm glad to hear that, because the community was concerned with some of the purchases that you were doing, and they didn't think they were necessary for our survival, like all of the playground equipment. Some of them had decent equipment. We thought it was a waste of money, and buying all the furniture, the community definitely thought that was a waste of money. So we're glad to see that you're slowing down that process of purchasing. And I know some of us use some of those dollars that you had that was time sensitive. I understand that, but the community didn't understand it. So, but they want you to put it into something that's more necessary. For example, we heard her talking about the swimming pool and things that we're going outside the community for, that we could put that money into rather than playground equipment. So that's another issue. I want to get to, you said there was 3 ways that we're going to survive, and one of them was increasing our enrollment. I have not been impressed with our recruitment efforts. I think the charter schools out recruit us. And you order thousands of yard signs, and they're all around your building. They're not coming to your building anyway. They don't even see your buildings. But what are you doing for enrollment that's going to make a difference?
So what we're doing is we've put a task force together, the two of us, along with the school administration, along with our community relations folks. around shifting away from our current strategies, because I would agree. They've been minimally successful, and yard signs aren't the answer. And the other thing is what is the message we're sending? And we see 4 areas that we can do better than anyone else in Gary for our children. STEM education, that's been a real focus of ours. Career and technical education, as well as the arts, and then athletics are things that we can offer at a level that with the facilities we have, the programs we have, the opportunities we have, selling those, but then also selling a sense of pride in the district. And we really, again, like we said, we want to focus on the success the district's had of coming out of state control and really showing that they're on a positive trajectory. So we think that's going to be a better effort for recruitment and not trying to be all things for everybody. It's really, what are those things that you can be number one or number 2 in the world, and focusing in on those hard and using those for enrollment strategies.
I know you have some people that you're hiring that they're supposed to be, for publicity and getting word out, and I'm not trying to take their position by making these suggestions. But I would like to sit down with you and anybody who's interested, if you're welcome to do it, to talk about strategy. I've been doing promotions ever since I was a kid. I started when I was 8 years old, doing carnivals in my basement and everything. My mother threatened to kill me because she told me church I had organized. I know how to promote. I've been doing it for years. I have 5 nonprofits, and they all help me do promotions. I'd like to sit down and share some ideas with them.
Absolutely.
But you know, for example, we're not utilizing our church. That is the way we get the word to our community. You're not coming to churches and making any appeals there. And then I look at yard signs. Yard signs play a role. They help as reminders, but they put too much copy on it. You can't read them when you got to stop and to read it. Then it's not serving its purpose. And I tried to tell them that before. Those people, I'm not, they're friends. I don't need any more interviews. I got enough already. But they won't listen. Okay. They won't listen. You can't put all that. I'm in that business. I sell yard signs, and you can't put all that copy on there.
So our thought, and I'm getting a little ahead, and I know this is not the topic of what we're presenting,
Right.
but
I'm just, there's wrong like that. I'm glad to see you.
So there's been a lot of talk about Greater Gary,
Yeah.
make Gary greater,
Yeah.
greater STEM, greater arts, greater athletics.
And you know what? You got a feeling going with the new mayor. You got a new feeling in the city.
Yeah.
Captivating.
Yeah, Gary Pride. I mean, like I said, very simple, very easy to see. You don't have to stop and go off the side of the road to read. Mr. Holt?
You were underestimating your revenues or your cash balance June 30th, because you were double counting your expenditures. So
Yeah.
if you really look at it, you're probably around 23 to 25 million June 30th,
Yes.
and more like 28 million at the end of the year.
Yeah.
I just didn't want people to think that the cash balance went down when it's actually going to go up.
Yes. Thank you for pointing that out.
I would expect you to have caught that. I would expect you to have caught that. Mr. Frugal, you're over state dollars.
But the overarching theme of the 2024 balance is good. Very, very good financial shape for the district going into local control.
Any other questions on financials before we move into investments in the facilities?
Okay, as we look at our facilities, really this was another presentation to the board that we gave this week. We're trying to show the board what they should be interested in, what are the important things, and then as well as modeling for them the type of things they should be expecting to see each year from the district administration. So we started by highlighting the investments we've already made through 1065 and through ESSER into our buildings. And I do want to clarify that these investments, this $43 million of investment, is exclusive of furniture and playgrounds. So this is 43 million, not including the furniture investment that was made in all of our school buildings, as well as the replacement of playgrounds. So the other thing that we've tried to do for the district is, you'll see as we go through the report, we're going to talk about urgent need, critical need, and non-critical need of components of buildings. We're making a really concerted effort for this summer and probably a little bit leading into the fall to take the great majority of the urgent need of deferred or capital maintenance in the buildings off the table, where there's not anything really looming out there in front of the district that they may not be expecting. So if you see, we have $5.3 million allocated this summer to really take care of either what I would call urgent need or long overdue projects that really need to be addressed now. Long overdue would be restrooms, locker rooms at West Side. Things that we also think can help as part of enrollment strategy when people come through the building and just notice that it's a nice, high quality building, but really taking care of the real critical components of the buildings that had urgent need. And so honestly, this summer, we're doing about twice as much capital construction as the district or maintenance that the district will need to do ongoing into the future. So we'll do a quick building by building assessment here, starting with Bailey STEM Academy. And Bailey has about $4 million in deferred maintenance. Some of it urgent, but it's not that much, not that hard to address. That's the other thing too. If there's $5,000 of urgent need, it's a lot different than $5 million of urgent need in a building. The only thing that I will point out about Bailey is this deferred maintenance cost does not include non-critical abatement. If something big was going to be done at Bailey, there would need to be abatement. It's a safe building. There's nothing that's harmful, but if disturbed, there would need to be abatement there. Banneker, Williams, and Glen Park Academy are essentially all the same building. Very similar architecture, all built about the same time. Our three lowest deferred maintenance buildings because they're new. What you do see and I won't be a broken record, so I won't address this when we talk about Glen Park and Williams. These are, and it's still difficult for me to say this, these are our turn of the century buildings, and I'm not talking about turn of the 20th century, but turn of the 21st. Where we see the issues in these buildings are really in electrical and HVAC, and not in the system in itself, but in the digital controls, because turn of the century is when we started going to digital controls. And if you think about what this looked like in 2005 and what this could do in 2005 compared to what it can do today, same with the HVAC systems. So you see a lot of replacement and maintenance necessary in these newer buildings that sometimes you wouldn't expect. Moving on to Bethune. Bethune is our early childhood center, and Bethune is a building that was built post-World War II. It has the hallmarks of the baby boom buildings. They were built quickly. We call them alphabet buildings because they're usually in the shape of an I or an H or a T. And frankly, these are buildings that people weren't expecting to be around 75, 80 years later, but they are. So what you see with the need of these buildings is a lot of overhaul at times, and we've made some major improvements there, but there are major improvements that still need to continue in that building. Definitely a building that can be fixed, and sometimes they can be fixed a little cheaper, but these buildings typically don't have the bones of, say, a Theodore Roosevelt High School. You know, those are buildings that were built to last. Beverage is a Cold War building. And what I mean by that is lots of concrete. They were, you remember the drills of getting under your desk when the flash was going to come? These were buildings that were built to withstand that, and keep children safe. Not the most visually appealing building, to be real honest, because they're built, like lots of concrete. So we're doing some improvements there this summer, really around the curb appeal of that building, some things that are long overdue. But also addressing some other needs there, but it is a high deferred maintenance building as far as the district is concerned, with just under $5.5 million there. Career Center, for building the size of the Career Center, and $2 million deferred maintenance is not too bad. And very little urgent or critical things that need to be done there, but we are doing a project there this summer to replace the ceiling in the courtyard, where a lot of our agricultural projects take place. Banneker is another one of the new buildings, you know, turn of the century that I was talking about. You can see it does not have a lot of deferred maintenance.
We did that. We did that.
Oh. There we go, turn it up. GMS. Yeah. Gary Middle School is one of the buildings that we did consider closing, and one of the reasons was, now, it was a low enrolled middle school, but it does have a significant amount of deferred maintenance as well. But it is addressable, and that's the one thing I will show as we go a little further, that this is all addressable. Glen Park Academy, one of the schools I was describing, the reason Glen Park Academy says with no parking or driveway expansion at the bottom is we had discussed sixth grade remaining in the elementary schools, and Glen Park is one of our highest capacity schools. And the administration there, as well as our team, after observing, felt that if another grade of school was added, that their car rider line would probably stretch out into the neighborhood and cross streets. So if we were going to move sixth grade there, we were also going to create a second drive around the building dedicated for car riders, for drop off and pickup. McCullough is an older elementary school, and we're putting significant investment in the building this summer, and we'll bring its deferred maintenance down under $1 million. Williams is our lowest deferred maintenance school with $287,000. But again, you can see electrical and HVAC are where that tends to lie because of the factors we talked about before.
But the point, the reason probably low is because of the recent built school.
Yes. West Side, we're making significant investments in that this summer, but there will be continuing investments. It's a very big building. And part of the size of its deferred maintenance is because part of the size of the building and just more components and those type of things. But again, we're addressing most of the urgent this summer, and we'll have a plan to address more in the out years. So in summary, after our summer projects, the district is going to have about $27 million remaining in, I'm saying deferred maintenance, but it's really ongoing maintenance too. The things that we know are going to need to be done into the next 5 to 10 years, and we can forecast out for them. So if we go on to the recommended capital expenditures, we feel that the district can incur really up to $2.5 million a year in deferred and ongoing maintenance in perpetuity right now. And I want to be very clear while addressing the things that need to be addressed. This is a way to get at all of the deferred and ongoing maintenance over really a 10.5-year period, because there will be some that will leak into the 11th year, but while being fiscally solvent doing so, if things continue moving positive. And then we have what the plan is, and this is something I shared with the board. Expect this to change every year because the priorities change, things break that you don't expect we're going to break, or initiatives change. But we've outlined what we feel over the next 10 years are the essential projects those years. There can be more than 2 projects, but every year for the next 10 years, right now, by priority order, these should be the projects that we make sure are addressed in those years. Yes.
Want to be clear, I give you an opportunity to explain this. You said there's an outstanding 26.8 million, which of course that will change this time, but that includes urgent things. And if you identify these urgent things as you've gone through recently and we're not addressing them. Because some of this funding is one time and we had to get that process moving. So just, why are we not addressing the urgent needs now? I guess.
We are addressing the most urgent needs this summer, along with the most long overdue things, getting them out of the way. There are other urgent things we will be addressing in the next couple of years. They're not as urgent. And when I say urgent, really things that need to be addressed in the next 1 to 2 years. Then critical is things that are either still working and should have been replaced already. You know, things that have extended what their industry standard useful life would be. And then non-critical really become those ongoing things that we need to do.
What is the balance or the amount of your unobligated pandemic funding that's got?
Very,
Very good number.
no, but 5.5 million of that has now been put into operations that will go into rainy day. So that, in essence, that was the unobligated. So,
All the pandemic funding basically is obligated now.
yeah, we're really close on it.
It's either encumbered or planned for, like with kind of some chunks to set aside, for example, science curriculum, which we'll talk about probably next month. Some teacher training that we're planning to do over the summer. So things that we can't quite encumber, but that we can plan.
Or how much of it could have been used toward this, toward maintenance?
Well, there's been approximately $24 million of pandemic funding toward deferred and ongoing maintenance items, and which was a lot of projects. One of the things we will come back to the board for, I believe May is the last time we can make May is the last amendment we can make to ESSER 3. We still have the ability to take more indirect cost out of the number. I think our total indirect cost ability was like 8 million and change. And I think we've taken 6 right now. So if there would be unencumbered money, as we've gotten quotes and as we've done programs, if there's money left over, it would definitely be our recommendation to take more indirect cost.
Yeah, I was not really concerned with deferring like HVAC costs or the leaking roofs. Those seem like not great things to defer unless you want more deterioration to happen.
No, and we're not. We're addressing those, like this summer. Pete, can you go back to the first?
Which slide you on?
It's the summer projects.
25, slide 25.
I thought in prior conversations, we addressed roofs and we addressed HVACs and
Oh, we did.
never seen them again.
We've addressed roofs and we've addressed HVAC. These are new roofs, new HVAC, you know. Well, and that's the thing, one of the things I really, Mr. Joyce, that I really emphasized with the board is, you know, if somebody's on the board over a period of 5 years, you're gonna see the same schools and same projects in certain components for, especially on a 10 to 20 year cycle, you know, it's never stopping. That you're gonna continually be addressing these.
Well, I see on your deferred maintenance though, over a 5-year period, and you could be $2.5 million of deferred maintenance. You're not going to ever get this done.
Yeah.
So you're gonna defer till it's annihilated.
Well-
I guess we can walk through this slide, but I think what they're saying on slide 37, the $2.5 million is not only taking care of deferred maintenance that's not in the $5 million, but this also includes scheduled maintenance that should be going on all the time. So that's why you're going to see a roof repair or HVAC scheduled out 5 years from now. So that's sort of the capacity that could be addressed both on deferred maintenance and what should be scheduled out over the next 10 years.
And if it wouldn't have been too cumbersome of a title, it would be deferred, ongoing, necessary maintenance. And it's kind of hard to inextricably or to pull those apart. But we're on a path where every 10 years, everything's being addressed unless it's an every 20 year, like an HVAC or a major roof.
And kind of where I was going when I asked this question, you've got, I can't add that up immediately, but you've got some things we've labeled urgent that is, you know, sitting there. And I don't want to proportion that, but I think some of this came from the charge that we gave to you was you wanted to let the income administration know what are the limits.
Yeah.
And so some of these, you didn't know about 2 years ago when you were putting your SR and your 1065 plans together. So now you've done that.
Yeah.
And so, we've already started the process to address some of these, and now we've identified more, and so that will be up to the next.
And there was stark unmet need.
Yeah.
That has been addressed. And I feel really good about the district's ability to stay up on this moving forward, as well as, potentially growing surpluses to do other than just maintenance. Now, the other thing that should be said is if the district would choose to consolidate schools, that number drops. And then the revenue numbers we're projecting don't. So that would allow it to be addressed quicker or to do other things in moving forward. There had also been a question of the vacant properties that are still in possession of the school district. You're fine. You can see that the vacant properties pretty much all are really down the Broadway corridor of the city of Gary. I'm going to do a quick rundown of those for you. If there's an asterisk beside a school site name, it's a school that we've identified that potentially could be repurposed. So Ambridge is an older building, probably the oldest of our vacant properties, I would say, just by the look of it. I'm not sure when the building was constructed, but it is one of the old pre-World War II buildings. And it has an annex on the back that I don't think may be salvageable, but it is a building that someone could find a use for. And we believe that building could be rehabbed. When it comes to Melton, Norton, Webster, and Riley, that isn't the case. Those were also, by my estimation, the baby boom kind of buildings, and were not upkept. And once they were vacant, have really fallen into disrepair and vandalism. Lincoln School was our central office up until 2019 and housed the student records of all of our closed high schools. And we kept that building in better condition and kept it secured because it was housing all of our records. So it has stayed in a better condition and is rehabbable. Duncan School also is on the same campus with Lincoln, in a little worse shape than Lincoln, but probably also rehabbable. Roosevelt is a building that is rehabbable. It would be expensive to do so. Let's make no mistake about it. It would be expensive to do so, and there probably are parts of the building that would not be as tenable as others. But it is a building, if there was the right funding, that could again be repurposed. And Lou Wallace was demolished not long ago, so it's just a vacant lot. One of the things that we do intend to do, since we have had an influx of money that we weren't expecting, namely the pilot payments from the city, is we had made a commitment to demolish abandoned buildings that were not able to be repurposed. And we're currently getting estimates on the Norton building. When my predecessor was in the district, a survey was done asking the community what building they would like to have demolished next. And
It's areas right near the Fragrant Park. Fragrant Park was a school I graduated from, and we converted it into a park, community but dollars. But Norton, yeah, it's a solar. It's nothing to do with Norton.
so,
I take it down.
so we've been working with the city around doing that. And then also Mayor Melton and I actually talked yesterday, and he said, well, if you've got a demolition company getting estimates on that, why don't we just have them get estimates on the rest? And we'll look into any potential funding where he made no promises and I didn't hold him to one, but the city could help us out with the demolition of some of these schools, because the remaining properties we have left as well, there's really not a commercial use for them. They're right in the middle of neighborhoods or on adjoining properties. For example, the Riley property is essentially on the same campus as Bailey STEM Academy, just off of a different road with the same tract of land.
Very good.
And you call that the Broadway quarter?
Uh, Generally,
Send it straight down the middle.
they're obviously Riley
Get away
is,
from Broadway. Okay.
yeah. Yeah, they're not all on Broadway, it's just they pattern well. Broadway's the big, I would say the main street that's closest in proximity to the mall.
Thank you. Any final questions on the updates?
I don't have a question about that, but I was allowed, at the last board meeting, to, speak, even though I didn't have time to sign in for the right to speak. I appreciate it, Mr. Race, Dr. Wilson. I am concerned about us getting a superintendent in place. I think the timeline, I would have thought we would have a superintendent in place by now for transitional purposes. I'm sure they'll get a person who has knowledge base and technical skills and maybe even the interpersonal skills to be successful. But I'm concerned about them having this knowledge that Mr. Reza has. And the delegation from Gary Reed asked that a timeline be put into, I think it was 327. Was that right, Reverend Thompson?
I think you're
Yeah, it's gonna go through, that dealt with that. Because the community had met for 9 months to a year and I outlined a transitional process that we tried to put in legislation that came from my delegation, but the legislation came from the Senate. And the Senate did not spell that out. But we felt that that person needed to be in place. We wanted the school board in place, and that happened in the time schedule it should have. But we wanted the superintendent in place in January to have that 6 month. The spring is the time to plan. But if somebody comes on July 1st, that's implementation time. They don't even know what the plans are. And that's the problem MGT had when it came initially. It didn't know it was for the community, didn't know what the status of the schools were, and they had problems starting school. You want to hear people, but they had problems starting school. You're gonna have the same problem because I don't go to the school board meetings because I haven't gone rather, because we're in session. I went to the first one I could this week. But the community is constantly saying they want that person in place. And it doesn't seem like that board, and I've even talked with board members individually. They just listen to me. And that's fine, they're cordial. But I'm telling you, my 20 years as a practicing principal, the 32 years that I've been preparing principals at the university, that's my job as coordinator of ed leadership. That stream is so important. Gary has gone in over the years and the last few years where they're developing their school improvement plans in September and in August. That's not when you document them then. And I'm just saying that if this DUAB board has any clout, that you need to say to them that they need to move this up. They need to get somebody in place as soon as possible. It's past the date that I think should have here. But I want us to be successful, not only financially, but academically, and that's imperative with the kind of scores that Gary has. 6 or 7 people passing reading tests out of 3 people passing the math test out of 100. We got to do better. And it's gonna come through school improvement plans and everybody, all the team members being aware of what has to be done. I think it's imperative and work for me is I had plans for the summer for every student. You got to do that so you can cut down the regression. These kids are already behind. You got to cut down on the regression. And I'm just saying there's so many things that we do, but if you wait till July 1st, I think we're running behind.
Thank you. I think we all share the same sense of urgency.
But they want to listen to me, but I think they listen to you.
May I address that?
Yes, you may,
Uh,
Dr. Rizzo.
Dr. Smith, it is my intention and our intention, the day that person is named, to start working hand in hand with them so they can have a rolling start, so it's not we're not gonna close the doors on them until July 1. So we're gonna welcome in whomever that individual is and really start implementing what their vision is or giving them the information they need.
Right, and you know what? The community met with Dr. McNulty before you came, and she said she was willing to take that person and include them in everything. So I'm not blaming your critique, I'm blaming the process. It's just too slow. I don't know who's guiding them. They seem to follow your agendas. They don't seem to set their own agendas, but that's got to be moved up. It's got to be moved up if we're going to be successful, because we're not.
And just to clarify, the new board, that's their responsibility. They've got a vendor.
I understand, but they've been following what I heard. They've been following Ms. Grace as far as setting the agenda for the meetings. That's what I've been told.
In terms of the superintendent search, it's all driven by the board that MDC had nothing to do with that.
That's not what they're telling me. That's not what they're telling me. I don't know who the lights are, somebody might.
Okay. Thank you for the updates.
You are.
Let's move on to the 1065 school improvement fund claims. Give it one down.
So you've seen it before. What's different this month is now it's based upon the July plan. I'm sorry, the plan that you approved last month, you approved in January. And there were no, transactions in January. And if you go to the last page, you see the 5 transactions from, February. So, I will tell you, all 5 of those were related to either roofing or HVAC that we're really finishing up projects from 2023. So all of those have kind of gone to the contingency line. Not quite an accurate description of them. So most of that line item has been used up for the year. As Dr. Rich said, we're having RFPs out to do the remainder of this work for the year. So we've got the only purpose that you need to vote on is to approve those 5 transactions, but you also need information to see how much is left.
Am I watching? Am I looking at the right one?
No, that's for the next.
Okay.
You want to.
He can share his document.
Step up here. Yeah.
So the second page, Dr. Smith has the 5 items for consideration. Any questions for Pete? If not, is there a motion to approve the claims on the 1065 school improvement fund document?
Move that we approve the document. Smitty?
Make a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any questions? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye, opposed, same sign. Claims are approved. Next, we have a report from Pete on expenses, certain expenses within his authorized sort of framework there.
Yeah, so there are 2 contracts within that 30,000 to 250,000 range that I'm notifying you of. The first was simply for some Microsoft software licenses, some for 365, others for Windows Server. Total cost is $53,000 and change. That's being paid for out of the operations cost. And then the second one was for basically metal detectors, but really high-tech ones. I'll tell you, I went to the Symphony over the weekend, and they were using this exact same machine. So no, these are popular, and these are already in place at West Side. This would be purchasing 2 more, one at an additional one at West Side, and then one at the Kirchen. So the total cost there is $169,795, and this is being paid for out of the extra fund due to the security law.
Good. Thank you on that report. Any questions for Pete on that report?
Are there additional detectors for other buildings? I mean, or is this then satisfying most of the needs within the district?
This satisfies most of the needs. We have detectors at our middle schools as well. What these are weapons detection systems. They're, the ones that is, as Pete said, to see at ball games and at large events that people can continue to walk through. We're doing it at Rear Center currently has an old school metal detector, which is slower and your belt buckle sets it off and everything else. This will allow ease of entry, and at West Side, the second one just will allow quicker egress into and out of the building. Or into the building.
Yeah, I recommend once ESSER is exhausted, I utilize school safety grants
Yes.
a lot. You are required to put in 50%, but the state grant will pay the other 50%.
Yes.
That's how we outfit it for every school detector.
Yeah.
Very good. Our next item for consideration of action by the board is the food service contract with Sodexo, which is the one-year extension of that contract. Anything else you want to provide right now?
Well, I'm just going to speak to the documents, and Dr. Ray's already to add that the original food service contract was started in 2020. The federal law actually says you can renew that for up to 5 years. So this would be a one-year renewal for that 5th year, meaning over the 24-25 school year. So going into 25-26, school systems will need to rebid this. So the documents I have for you, the first single page is just the extension. It's just renewal for next year. I've got a little spreadsheet here, and then it's just before we walked in, I gave you another one. And then the bulk there is the original contract from 2020. What I did with the second page, I gave you, Sodexo provided actual numbers for first part of the year, because I had asked them what the total cost would be. So they provided through that to January. And then so what I've done, this is my math, just annualizing, and I labeled this wrong. So the first year, which is projected, that means next year. So what would be for 24, 25, and then January year to date, and what that second column is over annualized is also what it is currently. So roughly, it's about $125,000 increase. I would also note that this is entirely federally funded from the Department of Agriculture, and so law requires us to continue to review any additional expenditures for the district and its distress status. However, at the end of the day, all of these dollars will come from the federal government or state funds. I just mean the change from the current year to next year is anticipated.
It's a little over 4%, I think, which is based on some of the other contracts we've seen in this state of Indiana on various services is modest in the last year, actually, as far as what the rate increases have been. So again, that's what that calculates out to. Any questions for Pete or Dr. Racer at all? I have, if I can, just one general question. A lot of times these contracts can be pretty complex when you put them back out for bid. Is there making a recommendation to the school corporation going into the next year, knowing that you need to provide food service starting in that school? Well, you've got summer meals as well as the school year. When would you recommend they start actually putting the RFP together to put it out, get bids, evaluate, and then actually, if they change vendors, who bringing somebody in?
I would say probably either very late in the first semester or right at the beginning of the second semester. There are very few companies playing the sandbox. So who it's kind of like a soft drink. You're going to get Coke and Pepsi and maybe a little off brand somewhere. But the state provides a great amount of assistance, IDOE does, with the construction of the RFP, and we'll check over it and things like that. So you won't be starting from zero. And the nice thing is too, every school district well, not every school district in the state has a third-party vendor, but there are lots of examples to look at for the RFP of these items.
Mr. Chairman, before we close, may I compliment Mr. Razor in behalf of the community? We've had 4 managers. 2 of them have been very toxic, as seen by the community. One of them was seen as very passive, nice guy, but not doing a whole lot. I think the feedback I'm getting from the community, I know it's been short, the short period has been that it's been positive, and I just want to know that the community is pleased with you. So you rank 1 out of 4.
Thank you.
No, I think just personal experience. I think we were the first school district in the state to have outsourced food service. And it extremely well. So I think Warren's now probably in the year 18 with the, you'll probably before the end of first semester. So the RFP, there are plenty of examples. The RFP has to be approved by DUAB, and that takes some time to make sure that's approved. Usually you want to work backwards, so you want your school board to have a formal approval of the new contract by April.
Yeah.
For the next year, for them to get in place. And I would usually even suggest maybe March. So working backwards, you want that RFP on the street in January.
Yeah.
But I would also encourage the school board, there's 3 players, there's Sodexo, there's Chartwell, there's Heaven Mark.
Yeah.
Make sure you go to other districts where you can see, what they're doing.
Yeah.
They're very similar. There's not a lot of difference between what they can do for you. But there are some philosophical differences. I was with a vendor that's not Sodexo, and there's some reasons why.
Yeah.
And so I think the board would want to see, the differences, see, the menu choices, how often they get back out into the community. But I guess my question to you is, what is your satisfaction level with Sodexo, and how often do you meet with them, and what is your interaction to help maybe even guide them with what's being served daily?
We've had a good relationship with Sodexo. We have housed 2 of their employees on site, they work out of our offices. There has been, just as a general overview, there's been some dissatisfaction, I know, from students and from parents with school meals. Having overseen food service now in 3 different districts, that's a pretty uniform thing. Having actually lobbied at the U.S. House of Representatives and the United States Senate to roll back some of the really restrictive requirements of what a school lunch has to have in it. Some really good meeting folks did some things that really damaged the palatability of school lunches and breakfasts, to be real honest. But so sometimes the Sodexo gets the ire of that, but it's then just making sure they're checking all the boxes. And they've been a great partner with us. Sodexo actually provided for the community breakfast for the UNCF breakfast that we had last week, that were a sponsor, so that showed a lot of community investment there. But last project I did for NGT before starting this job helped Texas A&M choose their new food service vendor. And we encourage them to do the very same thing, go to campuses your size that are using because it's the same big 3 players in higher ed as well. And agree, you should go see what they're providing.
And good, may I add, Sodexo works very well with the community, very well.
I've got to add that Tracy did share the contract with the food service team at you, so. Oh, okay. Appreciate your getting time to do that, and they really have some feedback, some positive feedback, suggestions to work with. But also did give their yearly contract in terms of meeting all the requirements.
Yeah, and as you go through the transition with the new board, you can do up to a 5-year commitment with 1-year renewals up to 4 times.
Yeah.
It is not feasible to move food service vendors every year.
No.
It just not works. So when you make a decision with a vendor, you're married to them, I would say, for a minimum of 3 years. For it to really work and for you to get consistency, for you to keep the employee. So encouraging the new administration and board and community to understand when you make a change, it's not gonna be every year, you're gonna have to, if you don't like it.
This does require action of the board to approve the extension, the final year. What is the pleasure of the board?
I move to adopt the amendment to the Sodexo contract as presented.
There's a motion. Is there a second? Motion and a second. Any further questions or conversation? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. The amendment is adopted or approved. Is there any other business to come before the Distressed Unit Appeal Board today? Hearing none, stand adjourned. Thank you.